All right, we are live. Go ahead, Adam, and we can start this meeting. You are muted, Adam.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I want to welcome you to this community prep meeting. We're fighting in just about 30 minutes. The Seattle City Council, the Public Safety Committee, will be meeting, and they will be discussing the ban that our movement collectively stood up and won that prevents the Seattle Police Department from purchasing or from using blast balls, tear gas, pepper spray, flashbang grenades, and other so-called crowd control weapons. We want to prevent the city council from gutting that ban. We've been talking about it for weeks. They've been trying to do this. So I want to thank everybody, on behalf of Councilmember Kshama Sawant. My name is Adam Zimkowski. I'm a community organizer in Councilmember Sawant's office. We're going to be talking about the political context, about what the crowd control weapons ban does and what the city council members are trying to do in order to gut it. But before we go into some of that political context and before we really kind of prep ourselves for making the most effective public comment here in just under a half hour, I want to go ahead and, as we always do, those of us who have joined us before on these community meetings, I want to turn it over to Nick Jones. It's not too late to sign up for public comment. So if you haven't already, of course, public comments opened up at 7:30 a.m. But if you haven't already signed up, please go ahead and do so now. Nick is a community organizer in our office. He's going to go ahead and show you how to do that in a few minutes. If you've already signed up, please just bear with us. But Nick, take it from here for a few minutes, please.
All right, thank you, Adam. Folks should be able to see my screen now, and hopefully people have gone through this process before. It shouldn't be anything new, especially if you've been able to join us in the past, but worth going through. During COVID, all public comment sign up is kind of done online for the city council. And it's really important our movement is able to get our voices into these meetings. You make our voices heard, especially on really important issues like defending our crowd control weapons ban. So to get to the public comment page, you're going to want to get to this website. If you've never done it before, the easiest way is to whatever browser you're using. Doesn't really matter. You should be able in the search bar to just type up Seattle public comment or public comment Seattle, whatever. And it should be the very first link, this .gov link, right at the top. See, I've clearly clicked it in the past. And it should bring you right here. Now that the public comments live, the form should be up, this form right here. You should just fill it out to the best of your ability. Importantly, for this email address part, the link that they're going to send you to get on public comment will go to whatever email you put in here. So, embarrassing. So make sure that email is totally accurate, that you will get the link so you can make sure that you can speak. And it's very important that you use a phone number that you can remember and identify with. It will be the last 5 digits will be how they will identify you on the Zoom call to make sure that you're unmuted. So make sure that this is all accurate. It will ensure that we do the best we can to get you speaking on public comment. No, it's just a 5-digit. They changed things since I've been here. Yeah, and then you can just click this for this part, really put whatever you want. I think it's kind of nice to add like a punchy little thing, like something like this. That will all show up on the public record. So even if you're not able to speak, the city council can still see that you came here to tell them, that we absolutely stand against rolling back these protections our movement won last summer. And you just hit submit. I'm not going to, because they do not care what I have to say in public comment, but they care what you have to say. And you should totally sign up right now, even if, like Adam said, you're not able to get on the stack for today. It's absolutely vital that we really try to get as many people into these meetings as possible on these crucial discussions and votes. So I'll leave it there. Everyone should take a moment to definitely sign up, like we said, right now. I'll go and post this link right in all the chats just in case anyone has difficulty finding it, and I will send it back to Adam. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Nick. And hopefully, everybody who's watching this is now signed up for public comment and prepared to testify to city council members. It's, we've won a lot of things over the years as a movement, and obviously Shama Sawant's office and Socialist Alternative use the council office in order to build these movements. We oftentimes talk about the impact that that focusing, the movement on the point of attack, and in this case, the Seattle City Council, when they're planning to make votes on critical legislation that impacts working people, we've seen time and time again how important that can be. Of course, not in and of itself, but in the context of, of an organizing strategy, recognizing that it's building power and movements in the streets that ultimately are going to change the balance of power in a way that can allow us to win important gains. And in reality, we've got some really concrete examples of this over the last year, and especially during the summer with the Amazon tax victory that our movement won, but then also this historic ban on Seattle police using tear gas, pepper spray, blast balls, other crowd control weapons. And it really was, it was the George Floyd uprising, as we've talked about, but then it was the hundreds of people who showed up during public comment in the middle of a pandemic, calling on the phone, just testifying, giving, extremely powerful testimony, some from people who had literally just been gassed, hours or days earlier, to make it clear to the city council that they had better pass this, and they had better pass a ban that was actually impactful. Now, in that context, our movement was strong enough to force that vote and ultimately to beat back their efforts to water it down, as Shama said, to drive truck-sized loopholes through the legislation. But we also knew at the time, and as Shama has said over and over, and as a movement we've seen over and over, the minute the establishment gets a chance, they are trying to roll back these victories. And in this case, this incredible Black Lives Matter victory. And the city council can only do this in the context of the thousands of people who are no longer in the streets, but they're also relying on the most active layers of the movement to hopefully, be focused on other things, whether it's just living their life or fighting on some other important social justice issue. So it really is critical as they're trying to beat back this ban on police use of chemical weapons, crowd control weapons. It really is important to be able, time and time again, every time the council is discussing, and especially like today, every time they're trying to take a vote, to get as many people out there as possible. Obviously, those of us who joined, those of you who were here just 2 weeks ago, or about 2 weeks ago on the 26th, might notice that it's similar. We're in a similar situation. And in reality, yes, the council members, they said they were going to vote on it on the 26th. Then they put the agenda item at the very end, and ultimately were not able to take a vote. They had discussion. So here 2 weeks later, the movement is forced to come back yet again. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to wear down the movement. We've seen it time and time again, whether it's the Amazon tax, they try to do it with minimum wage struggles. They're trying to wear down the movement. And obviously, it's hard for our movement to continually come out. And so we are so appreciative of the folks that are able to be here and are able to give comment. But it's also a double-edged sword for them. It does give our movement time to deepen our understanding of the situation and how, in this case, critically important it is that we fight back against this attempt to water down, to basically make ineffective this ban that we won. And it gives time for us to get more and more people involved. So there are some indications of how uncomfortable the council members are with repealing or watering down what is for most people just obvious, that that chemical weapons, which many of which are deemed unfit for war by the United Nations, the council members are uncomfortable, are having to have meeting after meeting to try to wear down. And in that time, it has allowed, for example, the Community Police Commission, the CPC, came out just a couple of weeks ago and said, quote, concerning the weapons officers may use while on duty, the CPC's analysis that the SPD's proposed changes would reverse the crowd control weapons ban passed by the city of Seattle in June. Quote, SPD's proposed changes would undermine Seattle's democratically enacted crowd control weapons ban and goes against years of CPC recommendations. Quote, after a summer in which community spoke out against SPD's use of these weapons, SPD should not be trying to go around city ordinances to increase the size of their arsenal, which does not promote community trust. In other words, there is a building understanding that what the council members are trying to do would in fact roll back this important ban. But of course, we need to be able to utilize that to build a movement strong enough to actually show council members that they will pay a big political price if they do actually take this step to undermine this legislation. It's important that we understand, and in a few minutes, we'll go to Sasha, community organizer in our office, to kind of go over some of the details about how exactly the council members are trying to water down this ban on Seattle police using these vicious, quote unquote, crowd control weapons. But it is important to understand, first off, why what we won in the summer is so important and how it differs so dramatically from what the council members are trying to enact by way of this quote unquote, revision of the legislation. The big thing about the ban that our movement, and again, it's hundreds of ordinary people who in fact were representing the thousands who had been gassed during the summer. But this is of course on top of many years of just aggressive and brutalizing behavior of the Seattle Police Department. The ban that we won would make it so the Seattle Police could not even purchase tear gas, blast balls, flashbang grenades, pepper spray, all these things that we saw so viciously used, including on children. They wouldn't be able to purchase, and of course, they wouldn't be able to use them. And this is a critical because this is what the council members are really trying to go after. And it would make it so anybody who has these weapons against them has the right to sue the city for $10,000 or more, depending on how much damages were done, and make there actually be consequences. Now, the council members are okay with a headline that said Seattle police can't use these weapons, but the idea that if the Seattle police do use them, then the city will actually be on the hook, that there will be consequences. That is what the council members right now are going after aggressively, and we have a leaflet that Sasha will go over, and we can go into more detail now. But before we do, let's take a step back and figure out why exactly is council trying to gut this, and how egregious it actually is coming in the context that we see right now. Not just the summer where we saw so many people brutalized by Seattle police, but in a riotous right-wing mob attacking the Capitol, being coddled by law enforcement, where we have reports of as many as, or who knows, potentially even more Seattle police officers going to DC, reported to participate. We've got a complete unwillingness of the Seattle Police Department, of course, to address long-term issues related to the Department of Justice consent decree. We've got dozens of Black and Brown community members during the course of this consent decree even being killed at the hands of police with no accountability. We've got the SPOG president, Mike Solon, actually tweeting out, very confusing statements about who exactly was this riotous mob on January 6th, confusing, what is an obvious attack by right-wing, you know, and in this context, we have the Seattle Police Department, or we have the Seattle City Council trying to water down a ban and make it one, so that the Seattle Police Department can in fact continue to purchase and own, but they can't use it except in situations where there's violence or where there's a crime being committed. But that basically means that there is essentially no limit, in the sense that the Seattle Police Department has proven itself time and time again incapable of policing itself, of having this discretion. We need community to be in control of the Seattle Police Department. But when it comes to tear gas, flashbang grenades, pepper spray, other crowd control weapons, they simply need to not have access to them. The city council wants to change that and blur that line. And then second, and we'll go in with Sasha here in a minute, they want to make it so of community members to sue or to actually have recourse is effectively taken away. And they're making these changes because at the end of the day, they appear to have no hope that the Seattle Police Department will actually follow this law passed by the Seattle City Council, but then immediately, you know, by the courts in conjunction with Seattle establishment trying to undermine it. And now, you know, by way of a vote today, and then in the weeks to come, try to make it official and actually roll back the historic aspects of this legislation, which made it such a huge Black Lives Matter victory. So right now, you know, I've talked a lot about the political context and a lot of given a lot of information about what the ban does now and what council members are trying to do. Let's go ahead and provide a visual demonstration of this and have Sasha kind of go over some of this stuff again, so that we can, you know, get a refresher, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the specific ways that we can most effectively pressure city council members. And then of course, we're just about 11 minutes out from the actual start of this council meeting at 9:30. Apologies for the long-windedness, but let's go ahead and go to Sasha right now to go over this leaflet. If you can take it away, Sasha.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be sharing this.
Oh, sorry, Sasha, you muted.
Oh, I was muted. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share this leaflet. All right. So we did go over this a few weeks ago, but as Adam said, this is a reminder. You know, the city council is saying that, you know, they are putting forward these changes to make this legislation more enforceable. But as you can see, especially in the top part of the box, that this is really just totally gutting the legislation. All of these weapons, you know, rubber bullets, plastic bullets, bean bags, pepper spray, mace, flashbang grenades would all be allowed under the changes that they're proposing. We've got question marks next to tear gas because they have not yet put forward an amendment or that would allow tear gas, but we have heard that that is a possibility. So we want to be prepared for that. And as Adam said, you know, tear gas is something that has been said, you know, not to be fit even in war, and yet being used here in our city streets, getting into people's homes. And then the bottom half of this leaflet goes into, so yeah, as Adam said, you know, our movement's ban, one, the ability to sue the city, the right to sue the city for $10,000 or more if any of these weapons were used against you by the Seattle Police Department. But the new proposal by the city council would create these massive loopholes, one around supposed, you know, so-called nonviolent demonstration loophole, which would take away that right to sue if you were, if any of these weapons were used against you, if the police deemed the protest that you were at was not nonviolent. And we know that the police will conveniently define a protest or a movement as violent to do what they want, right? So during the Justice for George Floyd protests, the Seattle Police Department declared a peaceful protest to be violent, or even riots whenever they wanted to intimidate the protests. And the other loophole, the criminal offense loophole, is quite similar that you would not have the right to recover damages or sue the city if you have committed a criminal offense immediate prior to the use of less than lethal force. And we have seen how the police regularly charge peaceful protesters with criminal offenses to justify brutality. People are charged with parading without a permit, failure to disperse, resisting arrest, and even fictitious charges of assaulting an officer. And even if criminal offenses were not subject to the whims of the officers, police brutality should never be okay. This is a really simplified way of visualizing just the really far-reaching gutting of this legislation that's being proposed. Nick Jones from our office will be sharing the link to this in the chats so that you can share it with people that you know, so that we can make it clear to our community, that this is not just, minor changes so that, it'll be better, it'll be easier to enforce. It's really dismantling it completely, this victory that our movement fought for and won. Thanks. And I'm going to pass it back to Adam.
All right. Thank you, Sasha. And again, just seeing the visual there of what is not allowable according to our ban and what could or will be allowable if this gutting of the legislation is able to be carried out is really powerful. And then, of course, the enforcement of it is really the critical thing, in the sense that if a law exists but it's not actually enforceable in a way that deters the behavior of in this case, Seattle Police Department from brutalizing thousands of people, then there effectively is no legislation. Let's go ahead. We've got about 6 minutes before this committee meeting starts, and of course, people will know that it begins with public comment after a brief introduction. So again, if you haven't already signed up for public comment, please do. Tell your story. You don't need to be an expert on chemical weapons to know that they shouldn't be used against ordinary people. Let's go ahead and just talk real briefly in these next few minutes about some of the ways that we've seen over the years that people can really effectively pressure city council to do what's right for community instead of what's right for big business or the political elite, or in this case, the Seattle police, which is ultimately, as we know, doing the bidding of the super rich in our city. It's not a coincidence that these tools, quote unquote, crowd control weapons, are always used time and time again against progressive movements, against working class movements. And we know that no greater, venom or, brutality, it's always used with the greatest force against, Black and brown communities, oppressed communities fighting for just demands. When we're giving public comment, of course, bringing out the experience that you've had with this, or that other impacted communities have had with this, is of critical importance. But it's also important to, if possible, make it clear that you're not just speaking as an individual, but as a member of a community. If you're a part of an organization, if you're a part of a union, if something, if you're a teacher at a school, or if you work at something that indicates to the city council that this is not just the demand of you, but of many, many. And in fact, when it comes to this crowd control weapons ban, they actually know that for every handful of people that are giving public comment, waking up at 7:30 a.m. to give comment, that it actually does represent a lot more people. But having people who can say that and who know that, and let the city council know that you'll be bringing those people in the future if they move forward with this attempt to gut the Seattle ban. That has a real impact. Another thing that has an impact is identifying and highlighting the council member, in this case, Councilmember Sawant, who is fighting for the strongest possible ban, for keeping this effective ban. And then making it clear that you expect the other council members to follow the course of Shama Sawant, who's supporting the movement and stand with ordinary people. To get real specific, and this is not of critical importance, but concretely, Councilmember Sawant during this meeting will be putting forward amendments to what is, a new legislation that attempts to gut the ban on Seattle police using these crowd control weapons. If people giving public comment want to say, don't gut the ban on Seattle police using crowd control weapons, support Councilmember Sawant's Amendment 4, which would bring the enforcement back into the legislation, then that would be also a powerful thing for the council members to know that we're organized to the point that we know exactly how they're trying to gut this legislation and we're fighting against it, and making it clear that we're not going to let them, wait us out, wear down the movement. We're just 2 minutes out. So people should get ready to move over to the Seattle channel when this thing starts. I know that Nick Jones, for people who have further questions about, the ways that the council members are trying to confuse people about, how they're trying to gut this legislation. We've got a frequently asked questions document, which I believe we'll share in the live stream. And I just want to also end by saying, of course, it isn't a coincidence that they're trying to gut this legislation, and that it's progressive movements, that it's Black and brown activists, that it's working class activists that fought for and won this, and that we're the ones who are going to have to defend it. So obviously we, can't reproduce the energy of thousands of people in the streets over the summer, or even at this point of the hundreds of people who came out to win this legislation initially. Right now, we're trying to navigate all the attempts by the council members to wait us out, but we do need more people. So if you're a member of an organization, or if you were active in the solidarity budget, or in organizations that fight about this, care about this, please let your organizations know. Please bring them out to future votes, and we need to not let them gut this historic Black Lives Matter legislation banning Seattle police use of tear gas, blast balls, flashbang grenades. So in just a minute, we're going to tell the city council members this. And the last thing I'll say is that people should also put on their calendars, it's big business who wants, these Seattle police officers to be able to maintain this deeply unequal system based on the use of force. This February 16th, next week, the Seattle City Council will be considering a resolution to say that we want to defend the Amazon tax victory, which taxes big business to provide basic things like COVID relief and affordable housing. So please come out on the 16th, tell City Council we need to defend against all attacks, including the state legislature, which might be trying to preempt, like they did with rent control, like they had done for so long with minimum wage. So please come out to that vote. It's 9:30 right now. Thank you so much on behalf of Councilmember Shama Sawant, those of us in our office, for joining us at this community meeting, and go ahead and give the Seattle City Council hell. Tell them, don't gut the ban on Seattle police using crowd control weapons, including tear gas, flashbang grenades. So thank you so much for joining, in solidarity.